Holly.
Hi.
It's so funny. I start dancing every time the music starts playing. Like, I'm so surprised when the music stops. Like,
oh man.
And I'm like, I've been getting my groove on over here.
It's pretty catchy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Though I probably need some new music. It's been a minute. So we do have some people joining us. We've got hello, everyone from LinkedIn user. So just for those folks who don't know, if your LinkedIn profile is private on LinkedIn Live, when I share it on my screen, because I'm going through a third-party source, it won't say who you are. And so sorry for that. But anyone who's joining us, please let us know where you're coming from. Thank you so much for joining us, because it's nice to have people, right? We're going live. It's nice to have people show up for us. So that's amazing. So Holly, thank you so much for joining me. As someone who's been on my LinkedIn Live before, I always appreciate your insights and everything you bring to the table. And so I'm so excited to talk about this topic with you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So, and you proposed this topic. So let me ask you, why did you propose it?
I think it's a topic that I can speak passionately about. I think it's a topic that is something that not a lot of people talk about. There's not a lot of roadmaps for people that, are interested in getting into leadership. And then what do they do once they have the job? It's kind of, they're thrown into the mix of things. And so if there's some type of tip or trick that I can share from my experiences that helps somebody else, then I'm all for it. So.
Well, and that's great. And that's a great mission. We want to help people succeed.
Right. Exactly.
So Jonathan is joining us from Salt Lake City. Hi, Jonathan. And we've got Brian and an anonymous LinkedIn user. So thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully some more people pop in. That's what typically happens. Oh, we've got Mo from St. Pete. So she's joining us. Yeah, I mean, people kind of come in when they want, which is cool. And then a lot of people watch the replay. So if you're watching live, I'm always interested to see who joins us live versus the replay. If you're watching this in a replay, put #replay. That would be really great, because I'd like to kind of get an idea of it. First time leadership, sales leadership is, it's daunting, right? My first leadership adventure, I was just sharing with you before we started, was in retail. And man, they sent me like across the country to set up new stores and to go to stores that were in trouble. And I don't think I had any business at that point being a leader. Like, I really should have known more, but that's that hindsight, right?
Yeah.
Like the amount of things that I didn't know that I thought I knew was like extensive. It's you don't know what you don't know until you learn. And I think that that's a super valuable thing to recognize, is you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yep, 100%.
So if you had, why don't you share some thoughts on some of those tips that you have for those first-time sales leaders?
Yeah, so I'll share a little bit about myself too, and just a little bit about my background. But my name, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Holly Signore. I'm a manager of sales development at Deltec, and this is my first official real sales leadership job. So I worked for a company prior to Deltec called TriNet for about 4 years. And in my time there, I spent working as an individual contributor SDR, and really worked on promoting myself and getting myself to the point of being ready for sales leadership. And the journey in itself, I think, from, the start of deciding, hey, I think I'm interested in this, to, okay, it's go time, like I'm ready for this, was just so many things learned during that period that set me up to be really successful. But the amount that I've learned from taking that first step, and honestly, the last, 9 months or so that I've been in this role, it's just been a constant learning stream of information every day. Something new happens, whether it's an interaction with my team, or if it's, something of trying to chase quotas or anything else that kind of pops up day to day for sales leaders. I've just really enjoyed kind of drinking from the fire hydrant, honestly, and jumping in with 2 feet. So A couple of tricks though, or a couple of tips that I have for you if you're interested in starting in leadership. The very first thing that I would tell you to do is perfect the role you're in now. Show that you can really be successful in that. You don't have to be number one or number two, but really focus on trying to make yourself proficient in what you're doing, because as long as you can speak to what you've done and show why you would be a good leader of the process, that's half the battle. The other half is really focusing on the people and what you're contributing to those around you. If you can do those two things consistently every day, I think that really sets you up well to start progressing into a leadership career. If you're at the point of your career where you're just jumping into leadership like myself and some others, then the very first step that I would tell you to do is break down your 30, 60, 90. You really need to have a plan for that first 90 days of leadership. The contents of that is really dependent on what your company goals are, what your missions are, what your tasks are, and where your team is at. But really take that first 30 days to observe the process. Understand, is this something that, is impactful? Is this something that I need to change? Is this something that, we're just doing and it's not really efficient? That's the type of thing you need to be looking for during that first 30 days. The next 60 days or the next 30 days into the day 60 is really where that, application starts to come into play. So the changes that you want to make, or any, tips or advice that you have for the company that you think might be a better idea of how to do things differently. It's a great time to start implementing some of those. And then by day 90, you're really just checking in, like, how has this done? Can I work with my leader to make sure that the last 90 days we've kind of progressed to where we want to be moving forward into the next 90? And once you've done that, you can really focus then on finding a mentor. That's really the second point, is go and find somebody who's done this job, who's done it well, somebody you admire. Doesn't have to be within your company. It's always great if you can find somebody both internally and externally. But find as many people. Like I look to a lot of people even here on LinkedIn that are leaders, and I may ping them with questions that I have sometimes. It doesn't have to be a formalized mentorship, but I definitely recommend finding somebody that you can always go to. And then really the third point that I have is, making sure that everything that you do is measurable. It's really easy to say, okay, I did this and this was the result of that. But what is that impact to the business? And making sure that you're keeping track of that, because that's how you're measured as a leader. What is the impact that you're bringing to those people on your team? Having those regular check-ins with your team and asking for their feedback. What can I do differently? What do you need from me? Is there anything that, that you would like to see that I'm not providing? Those kinds of regular check-ins will help you kind of guide to make sure that those measurable tasks are meeting those deadlines, and making sure that you're still really being the person and the leader that your team needs. So that was kind of a mouthful.
Yeah, no, there's to unpack there, right?
Yeah,
so
let's unpack
everything from the mentorship, which I think is super important. I'm a mentor for Girls Club, and that's a leadership program that really helps women gain some of those skills. But it's not, you can start being a leader at any time. You don't necessarily need to have a title. I think to be a leader, to be proactive, to, go above and beyond, or take that next level step up. And I think that's an important thing to note too. So for mentorship, right? So do you have internal and external mentors?
I do. I have a handful actually, and it's funny because I get something different from each of them. So internally, I have a great mentor. She works out of our Tampa office as well, and so I have somebody that's local to me, which is great. So if we ever needed to meet up, we're right there. But also when we do get to working in an office, I'll have that person that I can just run to and say, "Hey, like I've got questions, help me." Wow. Externally, I have a ton. And I really, again, I use people as mentors in different ways based off of what their strengths are. As situationally as I lead, I try to do the same thing with finding a mentor. Like I want people that have, the top 10 strengths that I'm trying to work on in my corner and around me at all time, because you're always going to end up like the people you surround yourself with. So find some good leaders to get inside your head.
Yeah, no, and I've got cohorts of people, right? Yes. That I sort of seek out advice from my women groups, where I've got a bunch of just women leaders, to
Yep.
my male,
Yeah.
counterparts, where I'm able to get sort of a different perspective.
Yep.
And I think that is powerful as well. Just because
Yes.
you perceive something one way does not mean that other people perceive it that way, right?
Yes.
And trying to understand that and take in all of the different perspectives, I think is super important. But the
I
same
think that's a good point too for like your, just learning how to be a good leader is really listening to all of those points around you too, and taking them in and trying to figure out what the best course of action is. I think a lot of the time, especially moving from individual contributor to leader, if you were really good at that and then you move into a leadership position, sometimes you're thinking your way is the right way because it worked for you. Whereas when you're running a team, it may not work for every single person on your team. So you have to find the ways that they, most gravitate towards and then work with them through that.
Here's a good question. So how do you define mentor, or what are the top 3 things you should get from a mentor-mentee relationship? That is a really good question.
Really good question. So to me, I would define a mentor as somebody I look up to that's doing better than me in the job that I want, or maybe it's a job that I admire, or something that's kind of future focused. So where do I want to see Holly in 5 years? Who's that person I want to be most like? And then I go find them. Because that person has probably walked in my shoes at some point through my journey. So I want somebody that already knows, what I'm going through. So when I bring them questions, they can help guide me in the right direction. I would say the top 3 things you're really looking for in a relationship there is somebody that's going to be honest with you. Somebody that can give you like that constructive feedback is so crucial, because you don't want somebody just petting your ego every time. You need them to kind of be the person that's able to tell you like, hey, this is what you need to work on, but know that it's coming from a good place. So somebody that has that good heart with it and isn't trying to, sabotage you or anything like that. You want them to really be uplifting to you, somebody that, makes you feel like you have the strength to go and do things on your own. And the last thing I would look for is integrity, both ways in that relationship, and kind of mutual respect, because they're taking their time, you're taking your time. And so you want to make sure that it's worthwhile, and that you're being honest with each other too in that process, so that you can, again, help yourself grow.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said right there. I think that building that trust to be able to hear the tough stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it being communicated in a way that adds value, I think is super important, right? That, I mean, someone can give you that hard feedback, right? And on the stuff that you need to work on. But you also have to have that trust to be able to accept it, and also for it to be, a two-way street. One of the things I like about being a mentor for Girls Club is that I also get something out of it. I feel rewarded. I feel like I'm able to support my mentees, and I can give back in that way. And so it is a two-way relationship, which is, I think, an important part that you need to it needs to be kind of considered.
Yep. 100%. Oh, I know this person. This one actually works with me at Deltec. This is one of my counterparts. Hey, Billy. I love this question.
Yeah, his question is, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced when transitioning from an individual contributor to a leader? And how did you overcome them? That's a really good question.
It's a really good question. Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of individual contributors face too when they're moving to leadership. If it's inside your own company, you're always going to be faced against the challenge of going from sometimes a peer to a leader over that person, or a peer to a boss, and you're now managing the people that you once worked with. I think kind of defining the friendship line to leader line can sometimes be really difficult for people. But if you're coming from outside the organization like I did, I think it's just truly getting a good understanding of what makes those individual contributors successful, first of all, and then really kind of coupling that with your skill set and making that kind of blossom and grow. Some of the challenges I initially encountered with that, though, is that, it is sometimes a different industry or a different way of doing things. And again, my way is not the only way. So learning what other people do to make them successful and applying that in, and really just kind of being a facilitator and bringing those best minds in, because I'm no longer the subject matter expert anymore. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool going from that. I would also say the me to we transition is different as well. So going from I'm only responsible for myself to I'm responsible for a full team now. You can be mentally prepared to take that, but it's totally different once you do actually get in there. So I do think that just like making sure that you really understand what managing, you know, a group of people does look like on a real average day-to-day view.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And also like building those relationships with your team members and really starting to understand what motivates them, what inspires them.
Yes.
You know, what keeps them going, what is their why. You know, the way I describe it is like we tell people to do discovery, right?
Yeah.
As individual contributors, we're all about the discovery.
Right.
When you get into a team leadership position, think about it as doing discovery on each individual person so that you understand what's important to them and what is going to help them succeed as individuals, right? And then bringing everyone together.
Right.
There's a story from Amazon, Jeff Bezos, when he was starting out, you know, they were in a warehouse and they were packing up boxes, and he looks over to one of his team members and he says, you know, I think they're packing these boxes on like concrete floors. So he looks over to his team member and he says, you know, I think what we need is knee pads. The person looks over to him and he's like, no, dude, we need like packing tables, right? So you never know where the best idea is going to come from.
Right.
That's why it's so important to be open.
Right. And both almost sometimes fix the problem, but the way it fixes it can be totally different. So.
Right. Exactly. How would you approach or directly ask a person to be your mentor? That's a good question too. We've got great questions coming.
These are really good. Yeah, no, this is good stuff. I personally, if I was going to ask somebody to be a mentor, really it starts out with a conversation of like, hey, listen, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm headed. This is where I'd like to be. This is my goals. And just wanted to share that with you. I admire you. This is why I'm reaching out to you, kind of explaining the reasoning, I think, why you're choosing them or why you would like to ask them to be a mentor. I don't think there's been many situations that I know of that you reach out to somebody and they're like, hey, will you be my mentor? That they would say no. But I mean, I understand everyone's bandwidth and plates are different with, you know, how much time they can contribute. So I would just make sure that you set that expectation with them up front. Like, hey, I'd love to meet with you 30 minutes once a week or once a month or whatever your, you know, time frame is there, that you're wanting to, you know, speak with them, and then really just kind of give them the lowdown of what you're looking to gain so that they, you know what they're getting themselves into as well. But really just asking somebody, I think they would be flattered if you ask them to be a mentor. I think most people, you know, want to influence people in some way or be of, you know, value to somebody. So anytime you're ready to ask somebody to be a mentor, I would just, you know, make sure you set the expectations of what you're looking for.
Yeah. And I would say, you know, like someone that you're just getting to know, spend the time to actually get to know them.
Right.
I think that's an important piece.
Building relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
I would say, I think most mentorship situations probably stem out of relationships like that. And sometimes it may organically happen without you directly asking. It may just be that somebody provides that value and you consider them a mentor, and, you know, you can ask them for more of their time and be strategic in that. But I think Jen's right. Like building that relationship is probably going to stem some organic, you know, discussions there.
Yeah. And you can always test the waters. You know, you can ask for people's feedback and they will generally give it to you, right? And then after you've asked for feedback a couple times or provided value to them as well by engaging, you know, then you could then take that next step and ask. It's just like prospecting, right?
It is. It's very
You're
similar.
prospecting for a mentor, right? You don't want to go all in at first. You want to just like start to build that relationship.
Right. Exactly.
Like dating.
Yeah.
How has it been to lead a team remotely as your first leadership role? So that's great.
It's funny because it's all I've known as a leader. So it's not really been too difficult for me. I think one of the things that we're always constantly, you know, kind of keeping tabs and temperature checks on is the mental health aspect of it, of just being remote. My whole team is here in Tampa though. So, you know, if we ever do need to get together, we do. But I think that remotely, just on a day-to-day basis, I actually enjoy it. I mean, my team is productive. I check in with them. We actually talk through Teams chat pretty much all day long. So we're always connected and just chit-chatting and making sure everybody's, good with what they need for the day. But remote leadership has not been that difficult. I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the remote environments either. Like I feel like in some ways
There's good in both.
It's a different sense of connection, but the connection
Yeah.
is still there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Like when I met my team in person for the first time, I felt like I'd known them forever, but it's like we'd only ever met virtually. So you do get that relationship there.
So, and then I've got LinkedIn user who says also engaging with their content on LinkedIn and then being able to say, I valued your content, would appreciate your advice in a more formal way. Yeah. I mean, just like when we started, right? I forgot to give you the time to introduce yourself because I'm assuming like everybody knows Holly. What do you mean? Like you're all over LinkedIn. Everybody knows who Holly is. But people are visible. And that's one of the values I think that LinkedIn brings is that people are more accessible. And
Right.
you can see who wants to share information and provide value
Right.
to the LinkedIn community. And there's a good bet those are the folks that wouldn't mind sharing some of their
Right.
learnings that they've had along their journey.
Agreed.
So Roop asks, what is everyone's view are the key differences between a mentor and a coach?
I would say a coach is probably somebody that's like knows the tactical day to day, where a mentor is probably someone that's more like guiding of life advice or like to get you through your career. So I would look at a coach as somebody that's more of like, even in a team lead role, like somebody that can do the day to day job, versus a mentor would be somebody that's maybe walked in your shoes, but is further down the line of their career and where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with that. I mean, coaching is more like, okay, let's review your calls and provide you strategic advice to level up for next time, right? Where, the mentorship is more big picture,
right?
Where I'm going, sort of feedback or
right.
Sort of like when I go to people for mentorship, I typically will talk about like communication stuff,
right?
And perspectives and how to gain buy-in from stakeholders within my organization and some of those dynamics that it takes time to sort of navigate,
right?
As you go through your leadership journey, you come up with different scenarios that you need to just run by someone, right?
Yeah. So, have that sounding board.
Yeah. Who do you seek out for advice? So I've got formal mentors and then I've got informal mentors.
Yeah.
We're just like, hey, what are you doing? Let's just chat on the phone.
Somebody that you can trust with good advice when you need it.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky in that way. So Mo says here, thanks for the advice. So, one of the reasons you've come on my LinkedIn Live is for the ladies' happy hours, right? And being a mom and a leader. Do you think being a mom makes you a better leader?
I do. I think parenting and leadership can be so similar. I don't think you obviously need it as a precursor to be a leader, but I do think that being a parent has taught me, and being a mom has taught me so much about how to manage people in general and just manage through problem solving and trying to, figure out ways that we can be efficient and effective with our time. I have to literally schedule and plan my entire life out or things won't get done. And so because I do that, in my home life and with my kids, I think it's really easy to translate a lot of that into leadership and into my day-to-day, into my career. So, I do think it has made me more prepared, or it's made me a little bit more, intuitive to some of those skill sets that I think other people may have to learn how to have, versus I've kind of had a life crash course in them. So I think that it, like I said, it's not a precursor, but I definitely do think it's made it a lot easier for me to be a better leader. And I do think, especially as a mom, I'm a nurturer, so I'm very nurturing to my team too. And, I always want to make sure that they're okay and like everybody's in good spirits and we're always happy and everything else. And so, it does translate very, very fluidly from
Mhm.
mom to leader and back to the other. But one of the things I will say about being a mom and being a leader is, you know, sometimes wearing that hat, you can kind of feel like you are doing the same thing over and over again in both work and home. And so just really making sure that you have that separation at the end of the day and taking that time almost for yourself to go kind of decompress first, even if it's 15 minutes, just to, you know, take off your leadership hat and put on the mom hat has been really helpful for me. And I know that's kind of vague, but really just making sure mentally I'm ready to switch off being a leader and switch on being a mom, because there are differences, but it does make you, I think, stronger all around.
No, and I feel what you just said. Like I need that decompression time.
Yes.
And since I was in leadership before I was a mom,
Yep.
and I can tell you that for me, I think being a mom and going through my journey, it just gave me more patience and more empathy for what's
Yes.
going on with people, and looking at it like each individual person's got
Right.
their own like stuff,
Right.
where they come from, their ideas, what motivates them, what inspires them, and really sort of digging into each individual person, especially after my second
Right.
child. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
I need to understand each and every single one of you
Yes.
on a different, like that.
Yep.
What are the differences and
Right.
what inspires? Because not everyone is inspired in the same way. I mean,
Right.
until it's easy to say people are inspired by money,
Right.
but that's not the case a lot of the
Right.
time.
Yeah, I actually really love that point too, because I think that's also super important for your first, you know, 90 days in leadership is making sure you truly, genuinely understand what makes your people tick. It can be really difficult. It's hard to dig out and find sometimes of, you know, what makes them tick, or they'll tell you, you know, oh, hey, this motivates me. But, you know, when you put it in front of them, it might not. So you've got to really like figure out with your people what really gets them across that line, and use that to help them to get them where they want to be. And I think that, you know, we do that as parents too. We're constantly bribing and dangling the carrots and trying to get them to do the things we need them to do. But I love that. It's so true. I mean, it's all intertwined.
No, and I agree. I mean, like just like in Discovery, right? You do the
Yep.
I think of it as the anatomy. There's the surface level stuff, the stuff they
Yep.
tell you, the bone, the real structure by what's going on, and then there's the heart. Like
Right.
the hard questions and the real things that are going to actually impact them.
Right.
Right. And so you have to always dig deeper to get to the heart of the matter. And it's the same thing with team members, that like it takes going that level deeper, because
Yeah.
people aren't just going to say, hey, nice to meet you, new leader.
Here's everything.
Let me tell you all the deep
Right.
things about myself that you need to
Right.
know in order to support me to be successul.
Yeah.
Right.
Making sure you don't have the expectation as a leader that they're going to do that, because that's going to be a big disappointment for you.
Nobody is just going to tell you all
Yeah.
the things. You have to get to know people and like
Observe.
develop those relationships. So Sarup has another question. Thanks very much for the mentor and coach. Do you think one can charge the same amount for acting as a professional value-added mentor versus a coach? You know, like I don't know that. Like I've never paid for mentorship or coaching.
Same.
So I do build good relationships, and you know, people seek out my advice and I seek out other people's advice. So sometimes you can formulate relationships where you have
kind of a barter almost.
Yeah, like a barter, or like just where you're able to seek out their advice, but also know that if they need you for anything, that you are there and available. That it sometimes it is a two-way street. I think that's important to mention. Well, we're at time. It's 12:29. It goes
by so fast.
Goes so fast. So next tomorrow I've got a fantastic session coming, blinders and leadership, right? Because another thing about leadership, especially first-time sales leaders, right, is that self-awareness. Self-awareness and actually being able to see and accept feedback. I think of it as like that movie where he says, you can't handle the truth. Right?
Yes, if you can
You can't handle the truth, right?
Yep.
You have to be able to be a person who can handle the truth and actually see things clearly.
Yep.
And I think that's an important piece of it. And so tomorrow night at 7 p.m., I have Blinders and Leadership happening. And then next week, I have Joyce Johnson, Heidi, Solomon Orlik joining me to talk about the Wise Sales Network conference that's coming up on June 24th, why you should come, all about the new sales era and the value you'll get from it. And I'm really excited for that. I'm going to be doing the breakout session for sales leadership with heart. So we'll be talking about some of these same topics. But thank you so much for joining me, Holly.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you sharing your insights, and I value your friendship.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was great to be here again, and I'm super excited for the lineup tomorrow too for the Blinders and Leadership. That looks like it's going to be an awesome session.
Yeah, I'm super stoked for that. So everybody have a great rest of your day. Have a good lunch. Go enjoy some coffee, whatever. But happy hunting out there.